I want you to imagine something with me. You're sitting across from someone you thought you knew. Maybe it's a partner. Maybe it's someone you've been building a life with. And in one single moment, one text message left open on a screen, one receipt that doesn't add up, one lie told so casually it almost sounds like truth. Everything you believed about your reality shatters. Not loudly, not with drama, just a quiet crack that runs through the center of your chest. And in that silence, something ancient wakes up inside you. Not anger, not heartbreak, something older. Something that Carl Jung would have called your life force, your libido, your psychic energy, the raw, untamed current that's been sleeping beneath every polite smile, every compromise, every time you made yourself smaller to keep the peace. This is the moment when you realize that the energy you've been giving away, sexually, emotionally, creatively, wasn't just about desire. It was about power. And the person sitting across from you has been drinking from that well while you slowly became a ghost in your own life. I'm not here to tell you a revenge story. I'm here to tell you what happens when you take that energy back. When you stop leaking it into the void and start channeling it into the one thing that can never betray you, your own transformation. This is about what Jung called individuation. And it starts the moment you stop performing your life and start reclaiming it. The violation. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were our night. The night we'd set aside years ago to stay connected, to talk, to be present. But that Tuesday I came home early. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I walked into the bedroom and saw his phone face up on the nightstand, screen still glowing. I wasn't the type to check phones. I never had been. But something pulled me toward it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the part of me that had been whispering for months that something was off, something I kept silencing because I wanted to believe in us. The messages were open, not hidden, not encrypted, just there. A name I'd seen before, a colleague, he'd said, someone he worked with on a project. Except these messages weren't about work, they were about a hotel. About last Thursday when I thought he was at a conference, about how much he missed her already. I stood there holding that phone, and I felt my hands go cold. Not shaking, just cold. Like all the warmth that drained out of my body and pooled somewhere beneath the floor. I set the phone down exactly where I found it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked into the bathroom, closed the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. And what I saw startled me. I looked thin, pale, like I'd been disappearing piece by piece and hadn't noticed. The awakening, that mirror moment, was the first time I saw myself clearly in years. Jung talked about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, repress, or refuse to acknowledge. I realized I'd been living in a shadow I didn't even know I'd cast. I had given so much of my energy to maintaining the relationship, to being the understanding partner, the supportive one, the one who didn't make waves, that I'd stopped feeding my own fire. My sexuality, my creativity, my ambition, all of it had been funneled into making him comfortable. And he had taken it gladly while building a second life I wasn't even invited to. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't pack my bags or throw his things out. I sat on the bathroom floor and I breathed. I let the shock move through me without trying to control it. And somewhere in that stillness I felt something shift. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. Cold, sharp, undeniable clarity. I had been living someone else's story. I had been playing a role I never auditioned for. And the energy I had been pouring into that performance, the sexual energy, the emotional labor, the constant adaptation, that was my life force. That was the fuel Jung said could either destroy us or transform us. And I had been letting it leak out, drop by drop, while I withered. The meaning. Jung believed that libido wasn't just sexual desire. It was psychic energy, the fundamental force that drives all human activity. When it flows freely, it creates life, art, ambition, connection, growth. When it's blocked or misdirected, it becomes neurosis, depression, stagnation. I had been misdirecting mine for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to be fully alive. I'd confused intimacy with self-abandonment. I'd mistaken love for the slow erasure of my own needs. And now, sitting on that cold tile floor, I understood something profound. The person who betrayed me wasn't the only one responsible for my emptiness. I had betrayed myself first. Every time I swallowed my intuition, Every time I prioritized his comfort over my truth. Every time I let my desires go unspoken because I didn't want to be too much, too demanding, too complicated. I had been the architect of my own fading. But here's what Jung also taught. The unconscious always finds a way to speak, and mine had just screamed. This betrayal, as devastating as it felt, was also a gift. It was my psyche's way of saying, "Wake up. You're dying in here." The sexual energy I thought I'd lost hadn't disappeared. It had gone underground, waiting for me to be ready to reclaim it. The decision. I made a decision that night, sitting on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub. I wasn't going to react from wound. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define the next chapter of my life. I was going to use it. I was going to take every ounce of energy I had been pouring into a broken relationship and redirect it. Into my body, into my work, into the parts of myself I had neglected. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming who you actually are, not who others need you to be. And I was going to walk that path, no matter how uncomfortable it got. I stood up, washed my face, looked at myself again. This time, I didn't see someone broken. I saw someone on the edge of something. The next morning, I didn't say a word about what I'd found. I got up, made coffee, went to work. But internally, everything had shifted. I started moving differently through my days. I rejoined the gym I'd quit 2 years earlier because he said we should save money. I reached out to an old mentor I'd lost touch with because I'd been too busy managing his emotions to invest in my own growth. I started writing again, something I'd loved before I'd convinced myself I didn't have time for it. The rising. Over the next 3 weeks, I became unrecognizable to myself in the best possible way. I stopped initiating conversations with him. I stopped asking about his day. I stopped performing the emotional labor that had been holding us together. And you know what? He didn't even notice, not at first. He was too busy maintaining his double life. But I noticed. I noticed how much energy I suddenly had, how much lighter I felt. I started dressing differently, not for attention, for myself. I bought clothes that made me feel powerful. I started taking long walks alone, letting my thoughts unravel and reweave themselves without his voice in my head telling me what to feel. I started meditating, not the trendy kind, the Jungian kind, active imagination. Sitting with the parts of myself I'd been afraid to meet, and they were angry, they were hungry, they were alive. If you've ever been in a place like this, where you're holding onto a truth no one else knows yet, hit that subscribe button. Because what comes next is about strategy, not reaction. It's about using your life force with precision. One night, he asked me if I was okay. We were sitting on the couch, the same couch where we used to talk for hours, and now it felt like we were strangers. "I'm fine," I said, and I was. For the first time in years, I actually was. The reveal. I waited until I had everything in order. I'm not talking about revenge. I'm talking about clarity. I needed to know exactly what I was walking away from, and exactly what I was walking toward. I hired a lawyer, not to destroy him, but to protect myself. I opened my own bank account. I started looking at apartments. I documented everything, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Jung said individuation requires facing reality, not the fantasy we wish were true. So I faced it. 6 weeks after I found those messages, I finally spoke. We were sitting at the kitchen table. He was scrolling through his phone, probably texting her, I realized with a strange detachment. I slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" he asked, barely looking up. "It's a copy of the messages from your phone. Printed, dated, and a letter from my attorney outlining the terms of our separation." His face went white, then red. Then he started talking fast. Apologies, explanations, promises. But I wasn't listening to the words anymore. I was watching the performance. The same performance I'd been giving for years, trying to manage someone else's emotions, trying to make the unbearable bearable. "I'm not angry," I said, and I meant it. "But I'm done." He asked if we could talk about it, if we could go to therapy, if we could try. And for a moment I felt the old pull, the urge to make it work, to be the understanding one. But then I felt that current again, that life force. And I knew this energy didn't belong in repair. It belonged in creation, the escalation. Leaving wasn't clean. It never is. He oscillated between begging and blaming. Some days he'd show up at my new apartment with flowers. Other days he'd send me paragraphs of text messages about how I was overreacting, how I was cold, how I'd changed. And he was right. I had changed, but not in the way he meant. I'd stopped being the person who absorbed his chaos. I'd stopped making myself small so he could feel big, and that terrified him, because my energy, sexual, emotional, creative, had been his supply. And now it was gone. There were hard days, days when I doubted myself, days when I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I'd remember the mirror. I'd remember how I looked that night, like a ghost. And I'd remember what Jung said, that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who someone else needs you to be. I started channeling everything into my work. That mentor I'd reconnected with offered me a project, a big one, the kind I used to dream about before I'd shrunk my ambitions to fit into someone else's idea of partnership. I said yes. I worked late. I traveled. I collaborated. I felt my energy return, but this time it wasn't diffused, it was focused, concentrated, potent. The confrontation. 3 months after I moved out, he showed up at my door unannounced. It was late. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this was the final scene. The one that needed to happen so I could close the chapter completely. I just need to understand, he said, standing in the hallway. Why you couldn't forgive me. Why you couldn't try. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw someone who still didn't understand what he'd taken. Not just my trust, my energy, my life force. The part of me that creates, that dreams, that builds. He'd siphoned it off while I'd convinced myself that's what love required. You want to know why? I said, my voice calm, steady. Because I finally realized that the energy I was giving you, sexually, emotionally, all of it, that was supposed to be mine. That was supposed to be fuel for my own life. And you didn't just betray me with someone else. You betrayed me by making me believe that giving myself away was the same thing as love. He didn't have an answer for that. He stood there, deflated, and for the first time I felt something like compassion for him. Not the kind that pulls you back. The kind that lets you see someone clearly and still choose yourself. I hope you figure out what you're looking for, I said. But it's not going to be with me. The transformation. Jung said that what we don't make conscious emerges as fate. For years, I'd been unconscious. Unconscious of my own needs. Unconscious of the ways I'd been abandoning myself. And fate had arrived in the form of betrayal. But I'd turned it into transformation. 6 months after I left, I barely recognized my life. I'd been promoted. I'd published an essay that went viral. I'd started dating again, not frantically, not to fill a void, but selectively, curiously, with full awareness of my own worth. And my sexuality, the energy I thought I'd lost, came roaring back. But this time it wasn't about someone else. It was about me. It was creative fire. It was ambition. It was the force that pulled me out of bed at dawn to write, to build, to become. I started teaching workshops on creative energy and psychological resilience. People would ask me how I'd moved on so quickly, so completely. And I'd tell them the truth. I didn't move on. I moved inward. I stopped pouring my life force into someone else's cup and started watering my own garden. Before we go further, I want to invite you to follow this channel if you're resonating with this. Because the final piece of this story is about what happens when you stop performing transformation and start living it. When you stop talking about your power and start embodying it. The integration. Jung's concept of individuation isn't about perfection. It's about integration. It's about gathering all the scattered, rejected, neglected parts of yourself and bringing them into conscious relationship. The part of me that was angry, the part that was ashamed, the part that wanted revenge, the part that wanted to disappear. I didn't bypass any of it. I sat with all of it. I let it speak, and slowly those parts stopped fighting each other and started working together. My sexuality wasn't separate from my creativity. My anger wasn't separate from my clarity. My grief wasn't separate from my growth. They were all expressions of the same force. My life force, my libido, the energy that Jung said was the engine of transformation. I started dreaming again. Vivid, symbolic dreams. Dreams about keys and doors and rivers. Dreams where I was searching for something and finally finding it. Jung would have called these dreams messages from the unconscious, confirmations that I was on the right path. And I was. I wasn't the same person who'd stood in that bathroom looking at a ghost in the mirror. I was someone new, someone whole, someone who'd learned that the energy we call sexual isn't just about bodies or desire. It's about creation. It's about becoming. It's about the raw, untamed force that drives us toward the life we're meant to live, the closure. A year later, I ran into him at a coffee shop. It was awkward for him. Not for me. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, energetically. Like he'd deflated. We exchanged pleasantries. He asked how I was. I said I was great, and I was. He mentioned he was seeing someone new. I genuinely wished him well. Because by then, I understood something crucial. He wasn't the villain of my story. He was the catalyst. The betrayal wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The moment my unconscious shook me awake and said, "You're capable of so much more than this." I walked out of that coffee shop and felt nothing but gratitude. Not for him. For myself. For the decision I'd made a year earlier to stop leaking my energy into a broken system and start channeling it into my own evolution. Jung said the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. I'd been transformed. But not by him, by my own choice to reclaim my power. That night, I sat down and wrote in my journal, "My sexual energy is my life force, and I will never again mistake giving it away for love." If you're watching this and you felt that pull, the pull to reclaim your energy, to stop performing, to start becoming, leave a comment. Tell me where you are in your journey, because this path isn't walked alone. The future, today I live differently. I move through the world with a kind of quiet power I didn't know I had. I choose my relationships carefully. I protect my energy fiercely. I create relentlessly. And when I feel that old pattern creeping back, the urge to make myself smaller, to pour my cup into someone else's, I pause. I breathe. I remember the mirror. I remember the bathroom floor. I remember the moment I chose myself. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And I'm living that privilege now. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but consciously, intentionally, with full awareness that my life force, my sexual energy, my creativity, my drive, is sacred. It's not something to be given away carelessly. It's something to be channeled, directed, used to build the life I actually want to live. I don't know where you are right now. Maybe you're in the bathroom. Maybe you're holding a phone with messages that don't add up. Maybe you're just tired of feeling like a ghost in your own life. If that's you, I want you to hear this. Your energy is not gone. It's just been misdirected. And the moment you decide to take it back, everything changes. Not overnight, not without difficulty, but irreversibly. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unworthy of the life you dream about. You are simply powerful. And power, when reclaimed, is unstoppable. The identity. I am no longer the person who was betrayed. I am the person who chose transformation over bitterness. I am the person who turned pain into power, wound into wisdom, loss into liberation. I am someone who understands that sexual energy is life energy, that the force we feel and desire is the same force that builds empires, writes symphonies, changes worlds, and I refuse to waste another drop of it on anything that doesn't feed my soul. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And I choose this. I choose the discomfort of growth over the familiarity of stagnation. I choose the risk of becoming over the safety of staying small. I choose myself. Every single day. If you've made it to the end of this, thank you. Thank you for witnessing this story. Thank you for sitting with the discomfort and the truth of it. And if something in you recognized yourself here, if something in you felt that quiet awakening, then I want you to do something. I want you to make a decision. Right now. Not tomorrow. Not when things get worse. Now. Decide that your energy matters. Decide that your life force is precious. Decide that you will no longer pour it into people, situations, or stories that don't honor it. Because you are not here to be small, you are here to become. And that becoming starts the moment you reclaim your power. I am not a victim. I am not broken. I am not less than I was. I am more. I am whole. I am awake. And I am just getting started.